All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1,000,000 Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with Mitch Whiting. Mitch, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much. It's so fun to just spend more time with you.
For sure. I think, man, and yes, you and I have been able to have some conversations and get to know each other a little bit. And I'll tell you, and it always helps being connected the way that we were, because it just, when you get connected, and I'm just going to give a shout out right now to Brooke as well. But and how do you pronounce Brooks? I'm going to ask you now because I'm going to
Yeah.
make sure I get that right.
Yeah, it's Brooke Casanovas.
I thought so. Okay. And Brooke, she is such a sweetheart. I do not know Brooke well at all. I got introduced to her by a friend of mine, Michael Roderick, and her and Michael are good friends. And he was like, man, Kevin, you should talk with Brooke about not only your podcast, but also a podcast that she's doing too. And her and I have just been getting to know each other a little bit. And I mentioned to you about Brandon Fong, this friend of mine. Well, he did this big birthday bash a little while ago, and Brooke was on that call too. I didn't even know that Brandon and Brooke knew each other. And so we're both on that Zoom call with Brandon, with about, I don't know, 50, 60 other people. And Brooke starts messing. She goes, "Oh my gosh, Kevin, you're here too." And so we ended up reconnecting. And when we had a conversation, she was like, "You have got to meet my friend Mitch, because Kevin, Mitch you're all about hanging out with givers, and I'm going to tell you what, Mitch is one of the biggest givers that I know." And she definitely had that pegged right. And what's cool is when we get connected through a mutual friend that we both have so much just admiration and respect for. It's like when you and I get to talk right from the get-go, it's like we've known each other for years because of Brooke. And
I
it's
think our
just,
conversation it was supposed to be 1 hour, and I think we spent 3 hours
we
together.
did. We spent on. That's why I was like, yeah,
It's
we spent
amazing.
like. And the crazy thing was, I don't know what your typical schedule is. I imagine it's probably kind of busy like mine. I never have a 3 hour opening in a window in my workday and stuff. And the fact that I even had that available and that you had it available, it's like, that was like, call it whatever you want. That was divine intervention right there, is what that was.
It
It
was
was like the
amazing.
universe was saying, you two need to talk, and you need to have some time today. And so we're just providing that for both of you. And, that might sound a little woo woo to some folks, but I'm going to tell you, I've experienced enough that at this point that I believe in that kind of stuff 100%. And so what I'd like to do now that we've got that kind of set, and let Brooke know a little bit about how much we love and appreciate her, I will turn it over to you so that we can set a little bit of context. I want to, have you share what you do, because this is way cool. I want to have you share what you do, who you serve, and what inspires you most about the work you do and the impact that you're making in the world, Mitch.
Yeah, I'd love to share. I have found that many high achievers achieve what they expect to feel like success, only to find out that they're more stressed than ever and
Okay.
struggling to be deeply present with their family. And that was my story. I was one day a few years ago, working at the largest company in the world, working at Walmart headquarters. And I moved to Arkansas for this job. And I grew up on the West, and I was not used to the allergy season that the South offers. So I was getting an allergy shot in my rear end because nothing else would help me. And I was like sick from sneezing 150 times per day. And so I went to this doctor's office, and the nurse said to me, on a scale of 1 to 10, how stressed are you? And I thought sincerely about her question, and I thought of all the things that I was grateful for. And I responded probably a 2 out of 10. My wife, who is so loving and
What's
also
our
very,
wives, right?
very precise and very authentic, looked at me and said, "Are you kidding me? You're like a 9." And so I have this moment of kind of a wake up call where I realized that maybe I'm not quite as happy as I think that I am. And at the time, I was so focused and embracing this quote from a Greek philosopher, Epicurus, who said, "Remember that what you now have was once among the things you only hoped for." I thought that was so beautiful. I'm like, wow, yeah, like I've been given so much and I'm just so grateful for that. And that's enough. Well, I ultimately found that gratitude for high performers can get in our way. And it's not true gratitude that gets in our way, but it's the form of gratitude that we often take on, which is to have a hard time admitting that we want and need more from life because some part of us feels like we're not being grateful for all that we've already been given. But what I found is a higher form of gratitude called abundance, which is to be grateful for everything you have and for that to be enough, with arms wide open for all that God and the universe still has for you. In fact, God wants to give you it all. He wants you to have more, and from life and from the people in your world, and to give and to love and to build and to serve and create more. And so I went on this journey. It was a few weeks later that I was talking to one of my mentors, um, who we were on the phone, and he just interrupted me and said, "Listen, you're Mitch Whiting. You're a high achiever. You're this, you're that. You love people more than I've ever seen. But do you realize you view yourself as a wounded bird?" And that was the real wake up call, because from the outside looking in, I had it all. I was working at the largest company in the world in a job that many people take 12 to 15 years into their career. I am flying an executive jet for work. I am a rock climbing coach for youth teams at night. I'm getting a master's degree in leadership at night. I'm serving in my church. I have my beautiful wife that I've always dreamed of finding. I have my first baby boy. Yet I'm living this 9 out of 10 stressed life. And that was so frustrating to me because I had been obsessed with self-help, listening to Tony Robbins since I was 10 years old, reading, Og Mandino and all of these amazing self-help books since I was 10 years old, yet 20 years have passed and I'm still living in this suffering state. So I'm now at this point asking myself, what is wrong with me? Why
Yeah.
can't I be happy? And I ultimately discovered what I now call the manual to the greatest technology of the universe, which is your human brain. I learned a few fundamental principles in the field of neuroscience that, when tied together with the psychology and the philosophy that I loved so much for all these years, enabled me to develop a system or a methodology that I now call self-transformation. I realized after those 20 years that self-help was just perfectly named. Self-help. It's helpful. But it doesn't deliver on the promised transformation. And so now I help my clients go beyond self-help to create self-transformation, which is to stop reframing your thoughts, to have nothing to do with positivity, optimism, mantras, or affirmations, but rather to start rewiring your brain to create permanent and lasting change. And so as I discovered this process, my life began to change. I hadn't promoted in the last 3 years in my
Okay.
job at Walmart. And over the next 10 months, I promoted twice in 10 months and tripled my income. And I went from
Wow.
struggling to exercise consistently for 10 years to now running a half marathon on the trails every Saturday with my friends for fun, which is so bizarre for me after how deep my struggle was to be consistent instead of burning out over and over again with my health. It's amazing. And I also became an accidental entrepreneur. I saw somebody posted on LinkedIn saying, "Hey, I'm struggling to consistently do the things that I tell myself I'm going to do. Does anyone have advice?" And I read this post like, wow, talk about vulnerability on a professional business platform,
Yeah,
right? Where
right.
most people are searching for jobs. And I just sent him a DM and I just said, "Hey, I saw your posts and I just want you to know that I can help you." And that was my first client. And then a few weeks later, I saw someone else post something very similar and I sent them a DM and I said, "Hey, I want you to know that I can help you." And that was my second client. And then during this 10-month period, all of a sudden, I'm making more money in 10 hours a week than I was in 40 hours a week. And it no longer made sense for me to stay in my day job. And I share all of these things because my life transformed very quickly when I stripped away the amount of hours that I was spending in this suffering state, which allowed me to live authentically as who I really am. I share these things because they're achievements and they're so sexy. And our brains love achievement and they love sexy because our society is so wired to push us to be better, to be faster, to be smarter, to grind harder, to hustle more, to be more, consistent. Yet there's another way, which is what I ultimately found was now what I call deep success, which is to go beyond success to obtain the world's greatest asset, not money or time. I have a client that when I met him, he was making $1 million a year, working only 5 to 10 hours a week. So he had the money and the time. Everything he was told would make him happy. And yet he was living 110 out of 112, meaning all but 2 of his waking hours each week in what I call a suffering state instead of a powerful state, which is stress, anxiety, overwhelm, self-doubt, hesitation, procrastination, judgment, shame, and comparison. And I know what this is like living in this state because that was my story. And so this deep success, the greatest asset in the world, is to go beyond success, to be able to sit in the peace and silence of your own soul without any need for escape or distraction. That's what deep success is, the ability to be present and available in the time that you have.
Wow. Wow. I'm just letting this sink in a little bit because I had a story similar to yours back in 2009 when my son Brock, at that time, was a year and a half old. He's now, my gosh, he's turning 16 next month, and at that time, my wife was also pregnant with our daughter Eliana, who was due to be born in March of 2010. And I was feeling this incredible push and pull going on in my life. You know, when I was at work, I was feeling guilty about not spending enough time with my family, and I wanted to spend time with my family, especially with my son Brock, who was a year and a half. I just wanted to hang out with his dad, you know, and yet when I'm with my family, I had all this chatter in the back of my head all the time about, man, you got all this stuff you need to do at work and this and that, and it was driving me nuts. And fortunately, I met a friend. I was talking with a friend, and he was like, Kevin, I know just the person you need to talk to. I know exactly who can help you. And he was right. That person did help me in such a powerful way. In fact, we are still, both me and those two guys are still amazing friends to this day. In fact, that guy who helped me all the way back in 2009, what are we talking? That's 15 years ago. I'm going to be seeing him in person this next month, and I'm like so
Incredible.
excited to catch up with him. You know, and
What was it? What was it about the things that you experienced or that you learned that changed or allowed you to let go of the chatter?
so it was along the lines of just I was trying to be too many things to too many people, trying to show up for them versus just being me and showing up as me for the right reasons and showing up in a way that I wanted to show up and essentially taking care of me first because then I could take care of other people and stuff and I could do it so much more powerful. And you know, and
It's so incredible. Yeah, this idea of trying to be someone else, whether
oh
it's because we don't feel like we're good enough, so we want to be someone
yeah,
else, or
totally.
because so many people are asking us to be someone else and we're listening to that. We're not choosing to live aligned.
Yeah,
I've discovered in my methodology is all based on really this one idea that you cannot become a better version of yourself. You can't
yes,
become someone
yeah,
different, but
yeah,
rather you can only become more of who you really are. Like Michelangelo spoke of his sculpture David, he didn't sculpt David, but rather he took everything away that wasn't David. And it's by stripping away the chatter, as you said, in what I call the suffering state, the amount of hours that you're spending in a suffering state, then what's left is the inner self, the real self, the inner David, right? And some call it, your inner child. It's who you really are and who you were before you picked up all the lies along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. You said the word alignment, or you said align, and
Yes.
that's the word right there, alignment. Because when we are just in alignment with who we are and in alignment with the way that we want to show up, not that we need to show up, because that's how I used to feel, is I need to show up a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
No, I get to show up the way that I want to show up, and that's when the right things happen. I meet the right people, I have the right conversations, that a 3-hour hole in the day presents itself so that you and I can have this conversation that was just meant to be had, and that's what alignment is. And it's an amazing experience. It's an amazing experience. So, okay. So now that we've got a little bit of context set here, I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of our listeners here. So, Mitch, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons that completely changed the course of your life, or business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And Mitch, I'm really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah, I was thinking about this question and I thought about this time about a year ago where, to give you context, I'm a pretty competitive person and I win a lot of things. And I was playing this new yard game called Bottle Bash with one of my friends.
Okay.
And the purpose of this game is to throw a frisbee about 20 feet apart, to throw a frisbee at a disc, plastic disc that holds a plastic bottle on top of a 4-foot stake in the ground.
Okay.
And so you try to knock this bottle off, and they have to try to catch the bottle and the frisbee before either hit the ground. So if you're
Okay.
coordinated, you're no longer coordinated while playing this game. It's so much fun. So he's beating me by 11 points. And I'm starting to sweat. How do I beat my friend? I'm getting competitive. And he says, "Hey, do you want me to give you a tip that will change the way you play the game?" And I said, "Yes, I would absolutely love it." It was clear that I needed some pointers. He said, "Perfect. I'm going to wait till after this game because I want to destroy you first." So he beat me 21-8. He actually
Okay.
obliterated me. And he said, "Are you ready?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm ready." And he said, "Okay. So when you're throwing the frisbee, you're pointing your foot directly where you want the frisbee to go. If you will turn your foot perpendicular," which was counterintuitive, it was uncomfortable for me. He said, "Watch the way it changes how you play the game." And so I did. I just trusted him and I tried it. And I start throwing the frisbee into that tiny stake in the ground and knocking off that bottle 3 and 4 times in a row.
Wow.
I end up beating him by 8 points that very next game.
Wow.
It was
Wow.
unbelievable. And
Wow.
he is a coach himself. And he said, and I'll never forget this. He said, "If that's not the power of coaching, I don't know what is."
Wow.
And what I found, and as I thought about your question about how being introduced to or meeting one person can change the way you live the rest of your life, I thought about this experience where it wasn't something big that he taught me. It was just the turn of my foot, but I can never go back to the way I was throwing a frisbee. I can
Mhm.
never point my foot forward again. And that for me has been the power of coaching, mentorship, and relationships, that you never know who it's going to be or where it's going to come from. Your bottle bash breakthrough, I call it, right?
Yeah.
Where you can learn the value of coaching is found in a single distinction that changes the way you live the rest of your life. And
Yeah.
so this principle remained true when it was this doctor, this nurse who was asking me on a scale of 1 to 10, "How stressed are you?" And
Mhm.
my wife, who lovingly, and this is a really beautiful principle that a true leader, and which my wife is, not only supports but also challenges. And
Yeah.
she challenged me in that moment. And she said, "You're kidding. You're a 9 out of 10, right?" And she called me out and then she supported me and she loved me regardless. And then my other friend who listened to me when I was, venting and sharing the things about my career and what I wanted in life and how I wasn't happening. And he said, do you realize you view yourself as a wounded bird? And it was these two distinctions that were so small, but that literally transformed the way I lived the rest of my life. It was this journey that they set me on to discover the work of self-transformation, to discover
Wow.
what deep success was, to be able to be deeply present with my family and happy with myself, so that from there, I've been able to create and build and love and give and serve in a way that I never imagined.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So if you look back at this relationship and now look at some of the things that have happened, I'm sure you can come up with a number of examples. I'm just going to challenge you to come up with one.
Yeah.
And I imagine it'll just come top of mind for you. Um, what is an example of where you got to make a really substantial impact, and you also know that that would have never happened if not for your relationship with this person?
Yeah. I'll tell you another story that is
Okay.
really entertaining and is not going to seem related for a second, but trust me, it is.
Okay.
And it's the story of my first kiss.
All right.
Okay. So we're going back to 14 years old. And I was hanging out with just me and four other girls. Okay. At the mall, of course, walking around the mall, and it's just me.
I
And
remember those days.
I had this crush on this girl, and we had just held hands at youth camp in the dark watching the slideshow. It was magical. I got her email so that I could message her, right? Because it was before we had phones. And we decided to meet at the mall with her and her three friends.
Okay.
Well, her three friends, we end up going outside of this really girly store. And I was like, I'm not going in there. And so I wait outside, and these four girls go in, and three of them, everyone except for the girl that I had this crush on, rush out of the store and run to me and say, are you going to kiss Courtney? Okay. I, up until this point of my life, had never considered kissing a girl ever. Had not crossed my mind. And so literally Disney movies, Disney scenes, kissing scenes from cartoons are flashing across my mind like, what do I do here? Because out of my mouth, without any choice, it just came out of my mouth. I said, yeah, I am. And at this point, I'm mortified because I
Now you're
literally have
committed,
no
man.
idea. I did not mean to commit to this, but I had committed. And right after that moment, they run away right back into the store, giggling, and they come out with Courtney, and those three girls sprint. They're gone. And I'm left alone with this girl that I've now just committed. No doubt I know that her friends just told her.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm like, how am I going to do this? And I'm thinking about all these Disney characters and what it might have looked like and how to do it. And we start walking laps around this mall because I'm trying to build up the courage and get through that mind chatter that you talked about to be able to just, man up and do this thing. So we end up going outside, and we're on like this sidewalk nature trail outside the mall. And fortunately, it was on a slant because she's significantly taller than me at this point. And
Okay.
so I'm on top of the slant, and she's, lower on the slant. And so our eyes match up, and I just turn and I kiss her, boom, done. And I had done it, right? And I had committed to my parents that I wouldn't kiss a girl until I was 16 years old. It was just
Okay.
a rule that we agreed on as a family to help keep us safe.
Mhm.
And so I walk home, and my dad, the second I walk in, you wouldn't believe it, he said, "Did you kiss her?" I was shocked because
Wow.
I had never considered kissing a girl up until this point of my life. And the first thing that he says, and I'm like, man, does God tell my dad everything? Come to find out, I have two older sisters, and later I realized that when we kiss someone, our cheeks go red for like an extended period of time. So he already knew. He had already been through this, and he knew the second he saw my cheeks more red than they've ever been in my life, he's like, Mitch kissed a girl. And so I
Wow.
put my head down in shame, and I'm just thinking, how do I get out of this? And I'm about to lie to him and tell him that I didn't kiss her. And when I look, before I look up, I say, yes, just came out of my mouth. And I told the truth. And I open my eyes and I see this fist. And he, pound it, son. That's my son. So I pound his fist with mine and we step into his office. And it was just such an incredible moment because I felt no judgment from him and only love. And then from this moment, he said, "Hey, son, I want to give you the opportunity first to celebrate this amazing moment in your life. You kissed a girl. I'm so happy for you. And I also want to give you the opportunity, if you want, to make two promises to me. If you want, it's your choice. One of them is that you'll never say I love you to a girl until after you're 21 years old, when you can really mean it." Okay. And then he said, the other promise that I invite you to do is to never kiss a girl unless both of your feet are on the ground. Okay. So I thought about these and he explained how they would be designed to really help me keep me safe morally, but also to build like real relationships that are meaningful. And I committed to these things. Now, I broke the kissing the girl with both feet on the ground many, many times. But what I didn't do is go further than that. It really protected me. And I've just shared this story for the purpose of explaining the power of my dad in showing up and loving without judgment and truly serving me, even though I had done something that I had committed not to do. And there's every reason why he could have been upset, why he could have put me down, why he could have given me a consequence or a punishment. But instead, he embraced me with love and created space for me to have that trust and openness about how I was feeling, what I was experiencing. And then from a place that was useful, to have a conversation that could change, again, the way I live the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And so I have created this same type of space in my business. And I have no doubt that who my dad is and the space and the love and the lack of judgment that he offered me growing up has shaped me to be able to have no judgment for all the people that I'm able to serve. And my clients have been through some incredibly difficult things. And I flew out to meet with one of my clients in California one time to meet in person at one of his offices. He owns a multi-million-dollar company, and we met at one of his offices. And he had hired me because he knew my methodologies could free him from his suffering, yet he didn't want to tell me the source of his greatest suffering. Instead, he wanted to learn my tools and do it himself. And that would be fine because all of my clients learn how to become master self-coaches. That's the purpose of all my coaching. But this one was deep, and it had been a struggle that he had had for 15 years. And because I was there in person with him, he said, "This is it. Mitch is here. He's at my office. I'm going to tell him everything. I'm going to share with him." And he ended up telling me that his daughter, when she was 4 and 5 years old, was sexually abused by his 16-year-old nephew.
Wow.
And it was the most painful thing that he's ever gone through in his entire life. And he had been meeting with therapists for 15 years to try to heal, to overcome the suffering. And over the next hour and a half, with the deep understanding that he had of the work of self-transformation, of the ability to rewire his brain, I asked him, I said, "Do you want to let this go?" And he thought about it. And I said, "Have you ever considered the fact that you never have to let go of the suffering, that you can keep holding on to it and that would be okay?" And he got really emotional because he's been trying to fight this for 15 years. And all of a sudden he realized, I actually have a choice. I actually don't have to let this go. I can keep this suffering with me. And it opened up, like you said earlier, not this need to, I need to do this, but rather I want to.
Yeah.
And when we choose to want to do something, all of a sudden we realize we have a choice and we have this freedom. And he said, "Yes, I'd like to break through." And I said, "Let's make this a permanent change and make this suffering and this horrible thing that happened to your daughter and to your family, let's make it a non-issue forever."
Yeah.
So we started coaching. And one of the things that he believed was that it was his fault that he
Okay.
didn't protect his daughter. And my clients understand that the cause of all of our suffering is simply believing something that's untrue. It's what I call, and my clients call, flat out lies. When we believe something that's a flat out lie, it always creates suffering. And the verse of scripture that I love says, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." The moment of breakthrough happens in a single moment, and it's the moment you see your previous thinking as a flat out lie and you believe the truth, and the truth sets you free. And so I ended up asking him questions about his experience, all the things that he did to protect his daughter, the fact that he didn't know that it was happening, and the second that he did, he took legal action, which was really difficult to do with a family member. He got his daughter the healing, the counseling, the therapy that she needed, and now she's thriving. She's so happy and she's totally healed, yet he's held on to the suffering. And when he was able to realize, truly, not just know that it wasn't his fault, but believe that it wasn't his fault, but through the rewiring of his brain, stay in that belief permanently, he broke down in tears, and just for 5 minutes we sat there and he just said, "It's not my fault. It's not my fault. It's not my fault." And he fully, for the first time after 15 years of therapy, realized that it truly wasn't his fault and he was healed. For the last 6 months, he's been free, and his marriage has changed. His relationships have changed with his daughter. He has this relationship with his daughter where that doesn't come up anymore in his mind, and he can just truly love her without distraction. And so I'm just so grateful for the moments that I have been able to be received with love without judgment, so that other people can feel that same level of safety to share with me, so that we can get to the truth, and the truth, not me, right? Everything I do, I like to say, is a resource, but God is the source. It's the truth that changes us. And when we believe what's true, we're liberated and we live from a place of power or freedom.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. That is just incredibly powerful. And, I think of my own evolution. And, you know, man, I'll tell you, I used to beat myself up really bad. I think a lot of us, man, we can be our own worst critics, and we can go down some rabbit holes, and it can get downright ugly and dark and
Mm-hmm.
painful. And um and when we make this discovery like you talked about here, I'll tell you, coming to the realization, for one, that I really can have it all, that I
Mm-hmm.
really can be the husband that I want to be, the father that I want to be, now the grandfather that I want to be. I currently have, as of right now, 6 grandchildren, and I just found out on Saturday that come December we're going to have 7, and I'm
Yay,
like
there's nothing
so
better.
excited. Yeah,
Congratulations. So
and
beautiful.
that I can provide for my family in a way that makes me feel amazing about being that provider. That I can also serve my clients in a way that makes me feel amazing about the role that I get to hold in their lives. That, like I said, that we can really have it all, and we can have it all on our terms. We do
Mm-hmm.
not have to. I mean, in fact, I have, thanks to Joseph and meeting him back in 2009, I got extremely intentional about, I am going to have a business that fits in with the kind of lifestyle that I want to live. That I am not about scaling and growing my business to as big as it can possibly be. Do we grow it? Yeah, it's been growing. It's definitely been growing. But I'm also doing it in a way that I get to be this, for lack of a better word, I mean, I've inspired some pretty awesome people. I mean,
Yeah.
13 years ago, I met this guy who is a venture capital guy. We met in a group of entrepreneurs, and we were together for a couple of days. And he, at the time when he met me, and I was kind of sharing how I've intentionally structured my business to fit in with the kind of life that I want to live and being the father and the husband that I want to be. And he followed me into the bathroom on the next break. And he's like, Kevin, he's like, man, I sure could go for some more of what you got going on in your life. Man, I could go for some of that in my life. And he said, I'm going to tell you, he said, I hang out with some of the wealthiest people in the world. And I can also tell you from personal experience, they are some of the most miserable people you would ever meet. And he said, I have a wife and two kids at home that I don't get to see as often as I'd like. And he said, I know it's all my own doing. And him and I have become really great friends over the last 13 years. He has made some substantial changes in the work that he does. In fact, for a period of a year, he shut his business down completely, took
Wow.
time off with his family to travel the world. When he did start working again, he did it on his terms, only working with people that he wanted to work with. And I'm like, how cool is it? Because we impact that one life, but because of who they are, the ripple effect and the widespread impact of that is massive.
It's massive. And the principle that I'm hearing from you is what I call the secret of becoming. And the secret of becoming is that achievement always follows. That when you let go of the lies like these that you were experiencing, which is, I can't have it all, I'm not good enough, I can't have a business and be with my family, that I can't have both of those things thriving, and you let those go, you start living aligned, right? In other words, you don't become someone different or better, you become more of who you really are. And the secret of becoming is that achievement always follows. You start to have an impact, the natural effect of becoming more of who you really are and reclaiming every hour that you've been spending in a suffering state. All of a sudden, you find yourself with more time, right? Like when I got my 50 hours a week back that I was suffering, it wasn't like 50 hours a week back where I was like, what should we do? Should we watch Netflix? Like, I don't really know. I'm kind of bored. It was, again, to love and build and give and serve and create in the way that I never actually even dreamed of. It's better than what I dreamed, which is what you're experiencing. And you were able to have that impact on that person because of the secret of becoming. You were able to become who you really are and pour into others, and the achievement comes. The results come, the impact comes for him and for you. You can have this thriving business when you're not attached to the outcome, which is why I created the anti-goal mindset. I have no goals for my business. The anti-goal mindset is how to achieve massive results without setting goals, to detach from this idea that achievement is everything and will bring us fulfillment. Because like you said, there's a lot of people that have a lot of money and yet they're miserable. Well, that's because our circumstances are neutral. They don't create our emotions. It's not the money, it's not the job, it's not the title, it's not even the spouse and the kids that can ever make us happy. It's an internal game, and it's simply learning how to believe what has always been true about who you are and returning to that person that you always were. Which is like, I just love this invitation from Jesus, which is so fascinating, where he said, become as a little child. There's not a lot of people in our society that's like, I'm trying to become like a little child right now. Like, that's not really the focus in general, right? We're not like, be more like a child. We're like, let's be better, let's get stronger, let's work harder. But you think about when you and I were 2 and 3 years old, we had it all, meaning
Right?
everything that we really want now, we already had. We were fascinated, we were curious, we were asking why, all the questions in the world. We were so energized and so full of life that when we woke up, we couldn't help but wake up everyone else in the house. And we were so energized and fully alive and deeply present that at the end of the night, we were trying to delay bedtime and stay up later. And we were quick to forgive. We got up every time we fell down. We weren't comparing ourselves of who we think we should be, or our past selves, or who's walking and taking more steps, or who started crawling earlier, or who's saying bigger sentences, but rather we were happy with ourselves and we were deeply present with our family. And so we don't need to become more. We can just become. It's not about change for my clients. It's about letting go. It's about letting go of the things that aren't us. And from that place, as you know, an aligned life creates impact and love and beauty in everyone else's life around you, which then ripples and ripples and ripples.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Powerful stuff. Well, Mitch, for anybody listening to this right now going, man, Kev, I really like Mitch. I love the way Mitch shows up, Kev. I'd love to find out more about him and the work that he does. How can they do that? Mitch, do you have any resource, any websites that you can share?
Yeah. You can go to mitchwhiting.com,
Okay.
and I've created a free assessment to be able to offer your listeners, which this free assessment, I've spent a lot of time. It's a pretty incredible resource that no matter what challenge you have in your life right now, it has amazing branch logic that's designed to guide you to the right resources. Some of them are with me, some of them are with others, some of them are just free gifts. But when you take this, you'll be able to ask, it's called the Passion, Purpose, and Progress Assessment, and it's free
Okay.
for you to answer questions about your life, about your passion, about your progress, about your purpose, and to answer these in a way that reveal to you what the real problem is that you're experiencing. Because the reason why we're stuck is always because we're just focused on the wrong problem. And when
Mhm.
we focus on the right problem, we find that it's actually pretty easy to break through and get the results that you want. And so I've created this assessment for those that are the perfect fit to work with me. Then they'll be given access for a free hour-long consultation where we can spend time together getting to know exactly where they are, exactly where they want to be, and how we can create those results together. And then if we both feel like it's a good fit, we can talk about what it looks like to work together.
Sure. Awesome. Awesome. Well, Mitch, I want to thank you for taking the time to have this conversation and just to share from the heart, to share your experience. The goal for this and getting these, in doing right from the get go, I wanted to do two things. I wanted to give people like yourself the opportunity to just honor the relationships in their life that have been most impactful. And then for the listeners who are also entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs, that these conversations just inspire them to not to feel like they have to or that they need to, but they want to just place an intentional focus on creating more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in their own life. And Mitch, with your help, we definitely delivered on that today. So I want to thank you for that. Any
Thank you
last
so
thing
much.
you feel led to share before we call it a wrap?
Just grateful for you. Just grateful for your friendship. I'm so excited for the next few months to come. A lot can change in life over a few months, and it's been beautiful already just having you in my life.
Yeah, well, the feeling is 100% mutual there. I am incredibly grateful to Brooke for connecting you and and that we've kind of started this relationship here. And I too am like, I'm excited to be on this journey and see what comes from this. Because yeah, we're on the right track.
We are. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mitch.